I didn't know a smile could feel like a confession until she gave me one. It wasn't flirtatious, not exactly. It was the kind of smile that carried weight, like she'd learned the hard way how to hold herself together when something inside her wanted to break. I first met her at the small cafe where I worked evenings after class, a quiet corner place near the bus station where people came to disappear into their thoughts. She ordered the same thing every time: black coffee, no sugar, no cream, like someone punishing herself for something she wouldn't say out loud. She looked around 45, maybe a little younger if you caught her in the right light. Sharp eyes, hair tucked neatly behind one ear, always reading from a battered paperback as if the world was too loud for her. The first night I spoke to her, it was raining. One of those slow, relentless rains that turn the city into a memory. The power had flickered twice already, and the other customers had left. She stayed. When I brought her another napkin, mostly to have an excuse to talk, she looked up, her fingers still resting on the rim of her cup. "Thanks," she said, voice low but steady. Then, after a pause, "You should get out of here before they close on you too." I almost laughed, but something about the way she said it made me stop. Like she wasn't joking. Like she knew what it meant to stay somewhere long after you were supposed to leave. I told her I didn't mind staying late, that I liked the quiet. She smiled then, just barely. And that was the moment that stayed with me. Because it wasn't warmth that passed between us, not yet. It was recognition. Like she'd seen something in me that she didn't expect. Something that mirrored a piece of her she tried not to remember. Over the next few weeks, she came back. Always alone. Always to the same table by the window. Sometimes she'd ask for refills she didn't touch. Sometimes she'd write in the margins of her book, eyes flicking up whenever I passed by, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the right words. I learned her name by accident. It was written on the receipt she signed one evening, Elena. It suited her, quiet but deliberate, like she carried her own weather. One night, the cafe was nearly empty except for her. The clock above the counter buzzed faintly. The fluorescent light kept humming like it was trying to fill the silence we didn't know how to share. She asked me what I was studying. I told her literature. She smiled again, that same careful curve of her lips, and said, "Then you already know too much about heartbreak." I didn't know what to say to that. Her laugh came soft and short, like she regretted letting it out. She looked down, brushing the sleeve of her coat, as if to erase the sound from the air. When she stood to leave, her hand brushed mine as she passed the cup over the counter, not by accident, not entirely. It was the lightest touch, but it felt deliberate, like punctuation at the end of a sentence neither of us had spoken. After she walked out, the bell above the door chimed once, and the sound stayed with me long after the rain stopped. I cleaned her table slowly, her empty cup still warm. There was a napkin folded beneath it, one corner slightly damp, ink smudged across the surface. She had written something there. Just one line. Some truths don't deserve to be told. I don't know why, but I couldn't throw it away. That night, as I closed the cafe alone, I kept thinking about that smile, and the way she said thanks, like it meant something heavier. Something I wasn't supposed to understand yet. ChatGPT said. She came in again a week later. Earlier this time, before sunset, when the cafe was still half empty and the light turned everything a kind of soft gold. I was wiping down the counter when I saw her through the window, standing just outside, hesitating like she was deciding whether to come in at all. She looked different. Not in how she dressed, still the same dark coat, hair pinned loosely back, but something about her posture felt unsteady, like she was carrying something invisible. When she finally stepped inside, her smile was small, practiced. "Busy today?" she asked, glancing around. "Not really," I said. Guess the rain scared everyone off. It had been drizzling again. The same kind of soft, constant rain that blurred everything. Lights, faces, edges. She took her usual seat by the window, setting her bag down with care, as if afraid to make noise in the quiet. For a while, we didn't talk. She read. I pretended to wipe the same spot on the counter for too long, trying not to watch her. But she noticed. She always did. When I brought her coffee over, she thanked me, then stared at it a little too long before wrapping her hands around the cup. Her fingers were slender, the nails short and clean, but her knuckles looked tired, small veins tracing paths up her wrists. I wondered how long it had been since someone noticed her like that, not for how she looked, but for how she carried herself. After a few minutes, she spoke without looking up. You ever wish you could just stop being known by what you've done? I froze. It wasn't the kind of question you ask a stranger. I guess, I said carefully, setting down the rag. But if you stop being known by it, how do you know you've changed? That made her smile, barely, but it reached her eyes this time. You sound older than you are, she murmured. I wanted to tell her she sounded tired. Not weak, just worn in the way people are when they've lived too much. But I didn't. She wouldn't have liked that. Instead, I asked, You writing again? And nodded toward her notebook. Her fingers tightened around the cup. Trying, she said. Some days I just look at the page until it stops looking back. She laughed softly after that, the kind of laugh that catches in the throat. It didn't sound practiced. It sounded human. Something about it made me forget where I was for a moment. I leaned on the counter, watching the way the light caught the small lines near her mouth. Maybe you just need a better place to start, I said. She looked up then, and there it was again, that quiet recognition. That strange, fragile connection we never talked about, but both knew was there. Maybe, she said. Then, just as I was about to walk away, she reached out, like she was going to stop me, but her hand froze midair. Her fingers curled back, resting flat on the table. Her eyes met mine, and something flickered there. Fear, maybe. Or longing. I shouldn't, she whispered. I don't even think she meant for me to hear it. But I did, and it stayed with me. That night, as I locked up the cafe, I kept replaying the way her hand had stopped, how it hovered, then fell. It wasn't what she did. It was what she didn't do. And somehow, that said everything. It was closing time when she showed up again, long after I'd turned the sign to closed. I should have sent her away. But when I saw her standing there in the rain, hair damp, coat clinging to her shoulders, I didn't. I just opened the door. You shouldn't be here, I said quietly. She smiled, that small, unreadable smile that never reached her eyes. You left the lights on, she said. I thought maybe you forgot. I hadn't. I'd been sitting in the dark part of the cafe, pretending to clean, thinking about her. She walked in slowly, her heels clicking against the floor. The smell of rain followed her, sharp, clean, a little cold. She set her purse down on the counter, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for hours. You okay? I asked. Do I look okay? The question wasn't sarcastic. It sounded almost like a confession. No, I said. You look like you need to talk. Her eyes softened for a second. That obvious, huh? She sat down at the counter, the same stool she always used, and leaned forward, elbows resting on the wood. The overhead lights made the room glow in that quiet, tired way the night sometimes does. I made her tea without asking. It was the only thing that felt safe. When I slid the cup toward her, our fingers brushed. Just barely. But it was enough to make me forget what I was supposed to do with my hands after. She stared down at the tea, not drinking it. I told someone once that I'd stop doing this, she said. Doing what? Letting people in. Something about the way she said it made my throat tighten. You don't let people in easily, I said. I used to, she murmured. And it ruined things. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like both of us were trying to hold back words that didn't belong to this hour. I leaned against the counter across from her, arms crossed, trying not to look at her lips when she spoke. Was it someone you loved? I asked. She looked up sharply. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, softly, no. Someone who thought they loved me. The rain got louder outside, hitting the glass in uneven rhythms. She finally took a sip of the tea, her hands trembling just slightly. I wanted to ask her what that meant, what it had to do with me, with this. But before I could, her phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen made her flinch. She turned it face down without answering. Sorry, she said quickly. Old habit. Something in me twisted, curiosity, jealousy, something close to both, but softer, sadder. I should go, she added, starting to stand. Wait, I said, before I could stop myself. She froze. Looked at me. Her hair had come loose from its clip, strands framing her face. Don't go yet, I said quietly. She hesitated. long enough that I thought maybe she'd stay. Then she sat back down, slower this time. Her hand was still on the counter, close to mine. For a second, the space between us felt too small to ignore. We didn't move, didn't speak, just stayed there, listening to the rain and the hum of the refrigerator. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "You make this harder than it should be." I didn't ask what this meant. I just watched her fingers twitch, like she might reach for me, and then pull back again. But she didn't. She stood up instead, her eyes flicking to mine. Apology, maybe, or warning. And then she left. The door closed softly behind her, but the echo of her almost touch didn't. The next time she came in, it wasn't raining, but it felt like it should have been. The air carried that same quiet weight, the kind that settles in just before something breaks. She didn't say hello. Neither did I. She just sat down in her usual spot, crossing her arms tightly, as if holding herself together. I made coffee instead of tea this time, even though she never asked for it. It was the only way I knew how to say, "I noticed you weren't okay." When I set the cup down, she looked at it, then at me. "You remember everything," she said softly. "Not everything, just what matters." She smiled, or tried to. It didn't last. There was a silence between us that felt too loud, like the air was pushing both of us to say something we'd been avoiding. Finally, she exhaled. "We can't keep doing this." My stomach dropped, though I didn't even know what this was. "Doing what?" I asked, pretending not to know. "This," she repeated, gesturing between us. "Whatever this thing is where I come here. And you look at me like you understand something I don't even understand myself." Her words landed slow, like stones dropping into water. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge. "I don't mean to." "Yes, you do." Her voice cracked just slightly. "And that's what scares me." I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. She had her hair down today, a soft, unintentional mess that made her look more human, less composed. There were faint shadows under her eyes. I finally said, "Then tell me what you want me to do." She laughed once, bitterly. "That's the problem. You'd probably do it." The silence came back, heavier this time, like we'd said too much and not enough all at once. I could hear the tick of the wall clock behind me, the faint hum of the espresso machine cooling down. "I don't come here because of the coffee," she said suddenly. "I know." Her eyes flicked up to mine, wide caught. "Then why don't you stop me?" "Because," I said quietly, "I don't want you to." She froze, breath catching. Then she looked away, her jaw tightening. "You're too young to know what you're doing." "Maybe," I said, "but I know how it feels." She closed her eyes, her shoulders shaking just a little as she whispered, "You shouldn't have to carry someone like me." The words hit harder than I expected. She wasn't being cruel. She was being honest. I stepped closer before I could think better of it, close enough to feel the warmth from her arm, but not enough to touch. She didn't move away. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What are we doing?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because anything I said would have made it real. She opened her eyes then, the kind of look that sees straight through every layer of denial you've built. And for the first time, I saw how tired she really was. Not physically, something deeper. The kind of tired that comes from years of pretending not to need anyone. I almost said her name, almost reached for her hand. But she stood before I could. Her coffee sat untouched, her chair still warm. She looked at me one last time and said, voice trembling, "Don't look at me like that. I can't survive it twice." The next day, she didn't come in. Or the day after that. I told myself I didn't care, that people drift, that it was normal. But by the fourth morning, I caught myself staring at the empty chair by the window like it was mocking me. Then, on the fifth day, she appeared. No smile this time. No lightness in her steps. Just a small envelope in her hand, folded like it had been opened and closed too many times. "I shouldn't be here," she said quietly, standing just inside the door. I wanted to ask why, but something in her eyes, red, tired, told me not to. Instead, I nodded toward her usual seat. She didn't sit. She placed the envelope on the counter between us. "I found this last week," she said. "Didn't think I ever would again." Her fingers lingered on the paper, trembling slightly, before she finally pulled them back. "It's not mine," she continued, voice uneven. "It was written to me. A long time ago. I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just listened. She took a deep breath, eyes unfocused. He died before I could answer. I was supposed to meet him that night, but I didn't. I was afraid. Her throat tightened. He was 25. Same age as you. I felt something twist inside my chest. She wasn't just talking about him. She was talking about us. Her gaze flickered to me, soft and searching. You even tilt your head the same way when you're thinking. God, it's ridiculous. She laughed under her breath, but it wasn't laughter. It was grief wearing a disguise. I used to come here because this place felt safe, she said. And then you started talking to me. And for a while, it felt like, she trailed off, shaking her head. Like I gotta go back in time. To before everything broke. The air between us shifted, heavy but strangely tender. She pushed the envelope toward me. I shouldn't give this to you. But maybe you'll understand why I disappear sometimes. I looked down at it. Yellowed edges, a faint scent of something floral and old, like pressed petals. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. On the back, a name I didn't recognize. I didn't open it. I couldn't. When I finally looked up, she was watching me, not with guilt this time, but with something else. Resignation, maybe. Or acceptance. I don't see him when I look at you anymore, she whispered. That's what scared me the most. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Then she smiled. A real, fragile smile that seemed to break something open in both of us. I guess that means it's not the past pulling me here anymore. The clock ticked behind us. Her eyes glistened, catching the soft light from the window. I didn't reach for her hand. I didn't say anything at all. But when she turned to leave, I said quietly, almost to myself, then stay. She stopped in the doorway. Didn't look back. Just stood there for a long moment before saying, you don't know what that would cost me. And when the door closed, I realized, maybe neither of us really did. She came back a week later, this time without the envelope. No pretense, no guarded posture, no careful distance. Just her, standing in the doorway like she'd been rehearsing it for days and still wasn't sure if she should be here. I shouldn't keep coming back, she said, her voice softer than before. But every time I try not to, it feels like holding my breath too long. I didn't have words ready. I never did with her. So I just gestured to the chair. The same one she'd avoided sitting in last time. She hesitated, then crossed the room, setting her bag down beside her feet. Her shoulders looked lighter somehow, like she'd finally decided to stop running from something. For a while, we didn't talk. The air hummed with small, ordinary sounds. The tick of the wall clock, the hum of the coffee machine, her quiet inhale before each exhale. But underneath it, something new lived there. Not tension, not fear, something that felt like surrender. Finally, she broke the silence. I read the letter again, she said, and I realized it wasn't about the person I lost. It was about the part of me that stopped believing anyone could look at me that way again. She looked down at her hands, resting on her lap, the faintest tremor in her fingers. I didn't think I was capable of being seen like that anymore. I wanted to tell her I saw everything. The cracks, the contradictions, the strength she pretended wasn't there. But I didn't. I knew words would cheapen it. Instead, I leaned forward just enough that my hand brushed against hers. Not by accident, not by plan. Just something that felt right in the space between thoughts. She didn't pull away. Her fingers tensed, then slowly relaxed, curling slightly until our hands rested together. No pressure, no claiming, just warmth. Do you ever think about what this looks like from the outside? She asked after a while. All the time, I said. She smiled faintly, eyes on the window. Then why does it still feel okay? Because it's real, I said, even if it's wrong to everyone else. Her laughter came quiet, breathy, half disbelief, half relief. You're too young to be that certain, she murmured. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just finally found something worth not running from. The room fell silent again, but it wasn't the uneasy kind anymore. It was full, heavy with meaning that didn't need explaining. She turned her hand, fingers intertwining with mine this time. And then, in the gentlest motion, rested her forehead against mine. There was no kiss, no cinematic moment. Just that, two people suspended in the quiet understanding of what they'd become. Her breath was shaky when she whispered, I don't know how this ends. Neither do I said. But maybe that's okay. Outside, the day was beginning to fade, golden lights spilling across the counter, painting us both in the same soft hue. She didn't leave that time. And for once, I didn't ask her to stay. We just sat there, hands joined, silence speaking everything we didn't dare say aloud. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something quieter, more honest, the fragile peace that comes right before love finally decides to stop pretending. ChatGPT said, "It's strange, the way time rearranges everything you thought you understood." Back then, it felt like the world was holding its breath whenever she walked into the room. Now, when I think of her, it's quieter, softer, like a song that ended, but still hums somewhere beneath the noise of ordinary life. We never talked about what happened that evening, the one where silence did all the talking for us. There were no promises made, no lines drawn, just a shared look that said, "We know," and somehow that was enough. Months passed. She still came around sometimes, not as often, not for as long. We'd talk about small things, work, music, the weather. But beneath it, there was always that unspoken current, the one that said we've already seen each other at our truest, and we survived it. She looked lighter now. Her laugh wasn't the careful, polite sound it used to be. It reached her eyes again. And me? I learned that wanting someone isn't always about having them. Sometimes it's about being the person who reminds them that they're still alive. I think she knew that too. One afternoon, as she was leaving, she said, "You helped me see myself again, and that's something I'll never forget." Then she smiled, the kind that carries both gratitude and goodbye, and walked out into the sunlight. I didn't stop her this time. I didn't need to. Because for once, I understood what we had wasn't broken by distance or age or timing. It existed exactly how it needed to, as proof that connection can be enough, even when it doesn't turn into forever. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about her, when the light hits just right, or when I hear her favorite song somewhere unexpected. And instead of ache, I feel this quiet warmth. Like she's still there in some way, not as a ghost, but as a lesson. She taught me that love isn't always about claiming or confessing. Sometimes it's just two people finding a version of peace together, even if it's brief. And maybe that's what love really is, the kind that changes you, even after it's gone. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?